So the question I ask myself every morning is, how in the health are you? And I ask you the same thing, how in the health are you? Are you where you want to be in terms of health and longevity or not? And this is the good news. Current research says that, well, this isn't current research. We know that humans are nature plus nurture. That's genetics plus epigenetics. So the current research says that genetics is only worth 30% of how well you are and how long you live. Epigenetics is at least 70%. So I'm working on taking this information and trying to, it's extremely complex, and trying to portray it so that it will be easy for you to get. And we'll do that one of these times. Because when we're talking about more H in water, that's epigenetics. It's not genetics, it's epigenetics. And it's one of the environmental factors that help decide how healthy you are and how long you're going to live. And I find it extremely exciting. So, let's do a little review from high school biology. So, well, I'm making the assumption, which of course is low emotional intelligence, that everybody went through high school. But if you didn't, it's either a refresher or you're learning something new. So what is an ion? And people hear about ions all the time. We even have pieces of equipment called ion something or other. So an ion is an atom. This would be one atom with 2 electrons. And it has an electrical charge. It's either negative or positive. If it's a positive ion, called a cation, that's formed when they lose electrons. Now, we've talked about free radicals many times. And you know that a free radical is basically an atom that's missing one of those electrons. And it wants, a perfect package is 2 electrons. So it'll go throughout the body trying to find a cell, a molecule, or another atom. And it's like those, what are they, cuckoos that lay their eggs in somebody else's nest and expect them to raise the kids while they're off doing their thing. Well, it wants to steal an electron. So now feels good again. It's got a pair. Here's the problem. That's all well and good, but it depends where they steal that electron from. Is it in a key part of the brain? Is it in a key part of the digestive system? Where are they stealing that from? Because when they steal one of those, it leaves that as a free radical, which is no. There are many really helpful free radicals that you have to do certain chemical processes, but if they're unhealthy, then it's a problem. So a negative ion or atom is formed when you get electrons. So if you're missing an electron, you basically have a positive charge. If you have both of them, you have a negative charge. Now, the hydrogen ion, or the hydrogen atom, guess what? It's only got 1 electron. So right off the bat, this hydrogen atom wants to get another atom, theoretically. And because it's missing an electron, it has a weak positive charge. Now think of that any way you want to. What's a weak positive charge? You meet somebody for the first time and you think, oh, I think I kind of like that person. I'm not going to the bank with anything. But I think I kind of like that person. I might like to spend a little more time with them. You know, it's not an emotional tsunami where you meet somebody and say, okay, this is it. I know that's the person I'm going to marry. So, the hydrogen atom has a weak positive charge. What does that mean? It means that it's attracted to anything that has a positive charge. So, hydrogen, do you remember this? Lightest element in what we call the periodic table. It's got an atomic weight of 1.008. Lightest element. It is believed to be the most abundant chemical element in the universe. It's the lightest and the most abundant. Makes up to 75% of all normal matter by mass, and more than 90% by the number of ions. It's just busy. At standard temperature and pressure, it's colorless, odorless, tasteless, non-toxic, non-metallic, but highly combustible gas. Do you remember that the sun is 75% hydrogen? It's only 25% helium. It's just made of hydrogen and helium, basically. And that's one reason it's highly combustible. That's one reason when you see pictures of the sun from electron microscopy, you know, there's combustion all over the place, flying out into the area around the sun. On Earth, hydrogen exists pretty much as water or as some organic compounds. And gas is used sometimes, but it's not like the sun. Okay. Hydrogen is called a bonding element. I think that's very nice. They didn't call it a potential thief. So it bonds with these other molecules that have a positive charge, because remember, opposites attract. So now you've got this atom with only one electron, and it's looking for some atom or molecule. If it can't steal, in essence, if it can't steal the electron, and it doesn't really want to steal it, it just would rather bond to it, then you get water, which is 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. And so as the hydrogen bonds with those the two atoms bond with the oxygen atom, then there's 3 entities, if you will. 2 of them are hydrogen and 1 of them is oxygen. And that's why we call it H2O. It's very simple. I brought another example. Ammonia is NH3. 3 hydrogen atoms and 1 nitrogen atom. So ammonium is 3/4 hydrogen, whereas water is just 2/3 hydrogen. Can you see how that works? All right. You can go on. You know, sometimes there are 4 hydrogen atoms, sometimes there are 5. Depends on the chemical, and it depends on how complex, you know, everything gets. But this is what I think is fascinating. I'm doing some studying about DNA. This is called the double helix. I'm sure you've heard that term. A couple scientists got the Nobel Prize for that. Meaning that they figured out the structure of DNA. So hydrogen is what holds these 2 strands together. You have one strand that's DNA, and the other strand is a mirror copy of that DNA. And then the genes are just located along those strands. They're just little teeny bits of DNA that carry plans, if you will. The plans to make you who you are. The plans to put the puzzle pieces all during your life. And hopefully they're putting them together toward health instead of disease. So hydrogen holds these 2 strands together, and it makes replication of those strands possible, because you know there's as you go down the sequence, you've got the DNA, then you make a copy of that, which is the RNA, and then you actually start building whatever the plan says you are to build. And these strands unzip along where the hydrogen holds them together. And they have to unzip, if you will, in order for it to be copied. You have to put it on a Xerox machine. So you have to take it out of the 3-ring binder, whatever metaphor you want to use, so you can put it on the Xerox machine so you can get a copy. Because the copy now is what's used to direct the functions of the cell. So bonding occurs between a hydrogen atom and an electronegative atom, such as oxygen, fluorine, and chlorine. Those are all positives, and so now you want, this negative one wants to bind with chemicals like that. How does the bonding occur? Well, it occurs because the electron is not shared evenly. Still, you've got this hydrogen ion with only one electron. And it takes 2 for a stable electron pair. It's really hard to have a marriage with only one person. You really do need 2 people. And so this, think of the hydrogen as never getting married. Single person is its whole life. But it's got good friends who are married. So it bonds with these other atoms like oxygen, fluorine, and chlorine. So this really means that the hydrogen atom is electronegative, but these are electropositives. So it's going to the opposite. So, according to Dr. Helmenstein, the result is that the hydrogen atom carries a weak positive charge. It's not married to anybody, but it's attracted to people who have the positive charge, although it still carries a negative charge. Now, that's the best I can do to explain this. And if my tongue didn't get all twisted up, you got it. Got the general picture? Because it's important, I think, to understand that. All right. So now let's go to water. It's the premium beverage for the human brain and for the human body because it absorbs immediately, it hydrates better than any other liquid on the planet, and it requires no digestion. So you can drink water all day long and you don't trigger digestion. Every time you drink a glass of juice, every time you drink a soda, every time you have a cup of coffee, you're going to trigger digestion, which means the digestive system never gets a rest. It's tired all the time. And as the digestive system gets tired, then it works ineffectively. Miners called water the other gold, which I think is kind of cute. Now, outside of oxygen, because you really do have to breathe, water's your most essential element because we can't manufacture it. It's the most efficient source of energy in the body. And people are surprised when they learn that. The water going in and out of the cells function like a hydroelectric plant. And that movement in and out of the cells actually generates electricity. Enough electricity to actually turn on a low wattage light bulb. You know, you can do that in the laboratory. You know, hook it up to equipment, and there's your light bulb, and get going generating this water, and you know, about a 20-watt light bulb will go on. And that's all you need in the brain to do everything that the brain does, because it's so efficient. So, enter HW. hydrogen water. It's simply water that has been infused with hydrogen so that its composition is more than 2/3 hydrogen. So remember, water is H2O, 2 hydrogen atoms to 1 oxygen atom. And hydrogen water means that it's got more than that. So, for example, nitrogen, it's got 3 of 4. Well, water has 2 of 3, and you can go on and look at other things. So, hydrogen water can come in different strengths. You can have a little machine. I have a portable one that I carry around the world because, let me tell you, we're lucky to have as good a water as we do. Some places overseas the water is not. It's scary to drink. So I can turn it on and it will do 1 pass of hydrogenating the water. And I can turn it on that same water again and get a little higher concentration. The only problem with this is that hydrogen is basically a gas. So some people say, well, I'm going to do 3 gallons of hydrogen water and I'll drink them over the next 24 hours. Not a good idea, because the hydrogen's going to start bubbling out. There's no pressure to keep it in. So when I make hydrogen water, I make it and I drink it right away, within a few seconds, because I don't want any of it to bubble out. I want it to bubble in with all its benefits. All right, now, the active hydrogen in HW functions like an antioxidant. Now, you're all familiar with the word antioxidant, correct? All right. What does an antioxidant do?
Fight free radicals.
It donates electrons. So you have this atom, this molecule, that's missing an electron, and an antioxidant just goes in like Santa Claus at Christmas time with a bag of candy canes and say, here, 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 help yourself. It donates electrons to heal the harmful free radical. Now, if it's not a harmful free radical, you want it to stay just like it is, but it's the harmful ones that give us the problem because somebody has stolen an electron. The hydrogen water can pass through the blood-brain barrier, although most antioxidant compounds can't do that. So you know what the blood-brain barrier is, right? Everybody knows what that is, up and down the chest. Okay, well, then we'll talk about the blood-brain barrier. It's hard for me to say the alliteration. Right outside the brain, before you get to the skull, there's a layer of tightly packed cells, and they're the gatekeepers. And they're to prevent substances in the blood from diffusing into the brain so that the brain is not subject to any harmful viruses, bacteria, chemicals, whatever. So what do we know, for example, can cross the blood-brain barrier? Oxygen, duh. It's a good thing, because the brain needs oxygen. Glucose, another good thing, because it needs to burn that for fuel. White blood cells, great, that's part of the immune system, helping to keep the brain well. However, nicotine can cross the barrier. Alcohol can cross the barrier. And that's the reason people quickly get a reaction, an effect, when they use nicotine or when they drink alcohol. And both of these are toxins to the brain, but they cross the blood-brain barrier. Inflammation or traumatic brain injury can damage this gatekeeper wall and increase the permeability so stuff can go through there and get in the brain that was never designed to be in the brain and should not be in the brain and is going to give you some trouble. And that's the reason to avoid inflammation. And inflammation is largely triggered by what? What you eat. Period. What you eat. Which is part of epigenetics. Epigenetics is your whole total environment. From the moment you were born, all through life. And inflammation is believed to underlie, I don't know, some guesses are 80% of all illness and disease. Well, inflammation increases the permeability of the blood-brain barrier and lets things through that you don't want to have get through. And that can potentially even impact the development of dementia, which is no place I'm planning on going. And traumatic brain injury. Look what's happening to a subset of sports athletes who have had traumatic brain injury, and now, Muhammad Ali is the poster boy for that. As he got older, pretty soon he could not string two words together to make sense because of all the traumatic brain injury that increased the permeability of the blood-brain barrier and let things through that damaged the brain. That's the current assessment of what happens. Now, the molecule of hydrogen water is small enough to go deeply into the cells, much more deeply than some other components. And Sloan Kettering, the utmost thing is hydrogen water can neutralize reactive oxygen species, type of free radicals, if you will, which are notorious for two things: destroying normal cells, but guess what? For distorting DNA, for changing your DNA, so that as the triggers come down for the DNA to get its plans out and decide how they're going to put the puzzle pieces together for your digestive system, well, we got a problem, because the DNA may mutate or gets distorted in some way. So if you think of DNA as having the plans to orchestrate what goes on in the cell, like you'd have a big puzzle and put it together and all the pieces are there. Once the DNA gets mutated, distorted, damaged, you try to put the puzzle pieces together and there's some that no longer fit. Can't find them anywhere. And therefore you can't finish the puzzle. And therefore this puzzle doesn't hook on to another puzzle like it's supposed to. And it's fascinating because just changes in one gene, of which there are about 25,000, changes in one gene can cause something called sickle cell anemia. So that's the reason that with only 25,000 genes and 7 billion people on this planet, no two are alike because of the way this process works. So these oxygen-free radicals, they really do contribute to illness and disease, and they're responsible for the aging process. Hello. How fast you age, how healthy you are while you age, how long you live, has everything to do with this process. So Max Planck, I'm sure you've heard of quotes by Max Planck. He says, "An important scientific innovation rarely makes its way by gradually winning over and converting its opponents. What does happen is that its opponents gradually die out, and that the growing generation is familiar with the idea from the beginning." Isn't that pathetic? What that actually means is that there are brains that think they really know. Nobody knows everything. And here comes a new piece of information. Well, that doesn't correlate with what I grew up learning, so it can't be any good. Some wonder if this is the story of hydrogen water. So let me tell you about that. Japan. Hydrogen water has been used and touted for its benefits since at least the 1960s. All right, that's more than 10 years ago. You've heard of healing waters, France, Mexico, India, and people would come and stay a couple weeks and drink lots of that water and feel better. And skeptics said it's all in their head. This isn't doing them any good, whatever. You know, why are they doing this pilgrimage and drinking this water? Well, guess what? Researchers decided to look at those healing waters, and guess what they found? Has a higher concentration of activated hydrogen than regular water. So this hydrogen water is actually doing something for them. If they only make that pilgrimage and drink some for a couple weeks and never drink any more again, well, the benefits aren't going to continue. But that's what it looks like. Now, the hydrogen is not doing this. I want you to understand that. The hydrogen is not a miracle antibiotic or something like that. That you drink the hydrogen water and now it, fixes all these things. The body is doing it. Remember, your immune system is the greatest healing system in the universe. But the hydrogen appears to help the water be of more use to the body, which allows the body to do more healing, because it can go so deeply into the cells. So we come to 1975, and there was an article published in the Journal of Science on the potential benefits of molecular hydrogen in medicine. Okay, so Japan, 1960s, touting this. Article from Baylor University, 1975. But there's a long space between 1975 and 2007 when another article came out saying, wait a minute, how come nobody is looking at hydrogen? Citing these older articles, it pointed out the selective antioxidant properties of molecular hydrogen and said that the ingestion, drinking an aqueous solution containing dissolved hydrogen could exert therapeutic biological effects. That's a long, long time for that original research to sit there, and nobody bought it. So now we come to 2019. There's now about 500 articles and 1,600 researchers, which is called being in its infancy, because that's not a huge body of knowledge. But all of these suggest that hydrogen is therapeutic potentially in over 170 different human and animal disease models. And the reason it's therapeutically beneficial is because hydrogen helps the body organs and the systems to function more effectively. Now, it's very, very uncommon to find a treatment that has wonderful benefits, high therapeutic potential, as well as a high safety profile. Meaning you could drink it all the time, and generally there'll be absolutely no problem. That's very, very rare. But hydrogen appears to fit that combination. Where do you get hydrogen from in the body? Well, it's produced by intestinal flora in your digestive system as it processes fiber. Now, fiber is one of the things recommended for human beings to eat. So if your fiber intake is low, or the flora in your intestines that would digest the fiber isn't working very well, then it doesn't produce enough hydrogen. So now even what your body produces is inadequate to take care of these free radicals. So fiber includes parts of plant foods that your body does not absorb. And there's lots of parts in foods. Not processed foods, but natural foods that contain fiber, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And I'm sure that you know that fiber can be soluble or insoluble, and they help with different things. But here's the interesting news. Some foods, oats and legumes, contribute both types. So if you're eating some old-fashioned oats and you're eating some legumes, you're getting 2 for 1, because they contribute to both soluble and insoluble. Dr. Raymond, fiber can function like an on-off switch, especially for conditions like irritable bowel syndrome. Soluble fiber can slow down movement in the digestive tract, which helps with diarrhea. And it can speed up movement in the digestive tract, which can alleviate constipation. So in my smoothie, every single morning, I put in a tablespoon of raw old-fashioned oats, because I'm eating now fiber that's soluble and insoluble. FDA says you need about 20 to 30 grams of fiber a day, and in the best of studies, estimates are that most Americans get half of that. Can't afford that. You want to make all the hydrogen you can, but you need fiber for that. So all things being equal, more fiber means more hydrogen. So we sometimes think that we can take in from the outside, and we can. But if you're not eating enough fiber to even do your own hydrogen creation, I'm not sure how much taking a bunch in from the outside long term is going, it'll help, but not as well as if you were already making the amount that your own body can make. It's not enough for me. I want hydrogen water, but I still want to have my body making as much as it can on its own. So you remember that the brain is about 3/4 water, just about like our planet, 3/4 water, 1/4 mass, solid mass. But the neurons themselves are more than that. Because of hydrogen, this is what Mayo Clinic says hydrogen does. Your cells are able to remain hydrated, meaning as you drink water and it goes into the cells, it helps them stay hydrated. Toxins and wastes can be eliminated. Nutrients can be transported. Your joints can be lubricated. So somebody said to me the other day, I got a lot of joint pain and the doctor can't figure out what in the world's wrong with me. And I'm thinking, hydrogen. Are you drinking hydrogen water? Are you eating enough fiber? And I can't tell people what to do, but my brain is going, hey, wait a minute here. There's a reason for everything. Ill health does not occur in a vacuum. Every pathology has an ecology, meaning epigenetics is impacting that. And how is it impacting that? It allows the immune system to send cells to fight infection-causing fungi, bacteria, and viruses. That's huge. Now, the end products of digestion and enzyme activities are carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. The hydrogen ions, or atoms, are transported to the mitochondria. You know the mitochondria are those little energy factories in every cell. And these little orange things here are mitochondria. They use the hydrogen to create ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And the brain and the body require energy in the form of ATP because it fuels most chemical processes in the brain and body. So it's not only the most common element, it really is crucial in fueling these chemical processes, and hydrogen plays a huge role. So we're not talking about something that's perhaps, or maybe, or I think. No, this is real. So let's talk about free radicals. Molecules are composed of atoms, each of which typically contains a pair of electrons. Got that reinforced? When you think of an atom, you think of 2 electrons. So here are 4 atoms, and you can count that there are 8 electrons there. So that's a healthy molecule. Some free radicals are absolutely necessary for successful functions, chemical processes. But others are harmful, and so here we have a molecule with 4 atoms, and there's a electron gone. It's missing, it's disappeared. All right, this, if it's not one of the ones that are necessary, then becomes a rogue free radical that can do a lot of damage. And the seriousness of the damage, remember when we were talking in the beginning about the atoms, depends where this free radical tries to steal an electron from. The attacks of the free radicals, which are unstable molecules, because remember they want pairs. They subject the cells of the brain and body to continuous damage. And the term is oxidative stress or oxidation. And you see that when you see metal that's been left outside for a long time and it's rusty. That's the process. Okay, you don't want that in your body. So think of this as an imbalance between the production of free radicals, some good, a lot bad, and the ability of the body to counteract the harmful ones with antioxidants that donate an electron, and now they've neutralized the problem. So specific nutrients, they are specific nutrients that help the body in its defense system. But in our world today, it's difficult for most people to get enough antioxidants. So hydrogen is what? It functions as an antioxidant, delivering, help for the body. So what's the problem with the harmful free radicals? Well, they slow energy production. They trigger wrinkling of the skin. I talked about that before. And women, it's not fair, but female skin wrinkles sooner than male skin by about 10 years. So we really need, some of this help. And it's interesting. Let's say that a couple are just a year or 2 within each other's age, and they've been married 20 years, and something happens and they decide to throw the towel in. He gets married in a year, and he marries somebody 10 years younger than his first wife.
Are you talking to me?
And the research is this. The male brain looks for a female that matches his skin age, if you will. And since men wrinkle 10 years later, it makes perfect sense they're looking for somebody 10 years younger because they're looking for skin that's the same range. And I'm not making a comment about good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying that's what tends to happen. Because free radicals cause wrinkling of the skin, and they show up. Accelerates the process of aging, actually can kill brain cells, and contribute to most diseases. Cancer, for example, is believed to be, well, we know that it's a disease involving cells that reproduce at an exponentially fast rate compared to ordinary cells. But it does that because the DNA has been altered It's been damaged by free radicals. So the theory is this: if you can get enough antioxidants into your body, you would likely be able to reduce the incidence or the severity of cancer. I've had at least 5 invasive basal cell carcinomas on my face because when I was a girl living up in Canada and we had 3 days of summer, we tanned in that 3 days, and sometimes we got sunburns, and that was not good for us because too much sun changes the DNA in the skin. Well, since I started learning about this stuff and changed the way I'm eating and drinking, it's been 10 years now since I've had a basal cell carcinoma on my face, and I'm really happy about that because every time I have one, they cut away a piece of my face. So, free radicals damage cells in both the brain and the body, and that contributes to the rate at which we age. This is new information for me. Patrick Flanagan, medical doctor, says, many of the tissues in the body are able to store, hang on, to some hydrogen, which acts as an antioxidant helping to protect against free radical damage. During the aging process, however, these hydrogen supplies dry up. Hello? Ouch is right. They dry up, leaving the tissues exposed to free radicals, which lead to the tissue damage seen with aging. All right, so now if we can keep these supplies from drying up, because not only are we eating fiber, so the body creates its own hydrogen, but we're getting some from the outside. The theory is that's really going to help slow down the process of aging. Too bad I didn't know this when I was 10. I look like I was 20 now. We generate molecules that damage the body every day. We generate free radicals. Just a simple thing as cells multiplying and dividing. It's not 100% accurate. You know, the Xerox machine screws up. And here's about 5% of the pages that you can't use because the Xerox machine didn't print them right. Well, we can do this by over-exercising. And I have a hard time talking to bodybuilders about that because they just don't think that too much exercise is bad for them. I have no agenda. I'll just tell them the research and they gotta do what they gotta do. For example, some of them will exercise 4 hours at a time and then take a break. Okay, that's too intense. About every 40 minutes you've got to take a break and let the body recover, but it hasn't been taught. Smoking, ultraviolet exposure as to too much sun, pollution, aging, or any other type of stress. Even when we breathe, we get some of these reactive oxygen species. So research suggests that the consumption of molecular hydrogen can help with a large number of issues, including obesity, diabetes, cognitive function, and even intestinal health. Now, I'm interested in all of those, but I'm very interested in cognitive function. Because Oliver Wendell Holmes, I think it was Oliver Wendell Holmes, that said, the brain is so important that the only reason you have a body is to carry your brain around. And I sort of get that. Because if you're, let's say, completely paralyzed in a wheelchair and your brain is working, you can accomplish a lot. But if your brain is not working, but you have this wonderfully healthy body, what's the point of transporting a brain around when it's not functioning? So brain health includes body health because I wouldn't be here. My body got me here. And it's really important to be able to have that mechanism. So, acute oxidative stress directly causes serious damage to tissues. And that's where you get the lifestyle-related diseases. Because epigenetics is worth 70% of how healthy you are and how long you live. For example, patients with rheumatoid arthritis in one study were given 530 milliliters of high HW for 4 weeks. The oxidative stress was reduced and the symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis were significantly reduced. Sometimes you don't cure something because of the genetic component, but you can often do something about the number of symptoms and the severity of symptoms. When you work out intensely, your muscles contract, and that causes stress. This can lead to signs of overtraining, which includes muscle fatigue, micro-injuries, and inflammation. So enter hydrogen for exercising. Researchers in 2012 did a double-blind study on 10 soccer players. That's not a huge study, but it's a start. They gave them hydrogen-rich water. And the patients and the personnel in the study who drank the hydrogen water instead of the placebo, because half of them got a placebo and half of them got hydrogen water, demonstrated lower levels of lactate in their blood, which you get when you work out intensely. So now, the sports world is starting to look at hydrogen water as what athletes and sports figures should be drinking, so that it can reduce the levels of lactate. All right, last slide. Because hydrogen becomes or acts like an antioxidant, it reduces damage to the body, ultimately reducing the load on the immune system that's trying to keep you healthy. So it's almost like a booster to the immune system. It fuels the ATP engine, those mitochondria, that get the power to every cell in the body. So more fuel means more work can be done. Less food has to be eaten. Hello? That impacts obesity. If you can get more work done with more fuel, then less food needs to be eaten. And less food further reduces the oxidative load the body has to deal with, because the process of digestion is a lot of work. And if you're snacking all day long, you know, the bread maker in the kitchen never gets washed. And eventually it can become pretty grody. So here's the latest piece of research I found. When you drink 2 liters of hydrogen water per day, and I do at least that, its antioxidant effects reportedly are like eating 1,512 bananas or 1,023 apples, looking for the same antioxidant effect. How much easier to drink a couple liters of hydrogen water? So think about that and tailor, no pun intended, your lifestyle to the current research. Thank you.